You know Reba McEntire is the queen of country music if you know anything about it. He was a famous star who ruled the charts and TV for decades. Offstage, her 26-year marriage to Narvel Blackstock, who was her manager, was watched by fans. It looked like one of the strongest partnerships in Hollywood, until they suddenly split up. But what really shocked everyone was when Narvel moved on with a new partner who was a close friend of Reba's. Reba finally talked about her ex-husband's new relationship after keeping her thoughts about it a secret for years. And her honest response caught everyone in the music world by surprise. What did Reba McEntire really say about her ex-husband's new relationship? Let us look into what took place. It was a love story between Reba McEntire and Narvel Blackstock that slowly fell apart. For many years, Reba McEntire and Narvel Blackstock looked like they had everything together. Together they built a life, a family, and a very successful career. Their lives became so intertwined that it was hard to tell where their marriage ended and their business partnership started. Fans thought the relationship looked stable, but it had become much more complicated over time than they thought. They had been together for decades before things finally fell apart. The story of them started a long time before they got married. Narvel joined Reba's band in 1980, becoming a part of the team that helped the country singer who was slowly becoming a star. At first, they were just working together, but as the years went by, their relationship got stronger, and Narvel eventually became Reba's boss. Things changed in 1989. When they got married, it was on a boat in Lake Tahoe. They were married for 26 years. They had worked together for almost 10 years at that point. So, getting married seemed like a logical next step in a relationship that was already strong. Narvel was more than just Reba's husband. He helped her with her career, made choices with her, and was there for her as she became one of the biggest names in country music. That agreement seemed to work for a long time. Reba has said that Narvel was her biggest fan and supporter, especially when she wasn't sure if her career would still go forward. Reba said that Narvel kept telling her she would record again before she got her record deal with Nash Icon in 2014. He knew what to do, but she didn't. Reba's job wasn't just a job, so that kind of help meant a lot. It was the life they had made together. In the end, they had one son together, named Shelby Blackstock. Reba also became a stepmother to Narvel's 3 kids from a previous marriage. After Narvel's son Brandon married Kelly Clarkson, they became even more involved in the entertainment business. The arrangement seemed to work well for years. They owned a business, raised a family, and traveled the world together. But there was another side to their relationship that Reba wouldn't talk about until a long time later. She said that work had become a big part of their relationship when she thought about it now. They could talk about work even when they were on vacation. What started out as a business relationship turned into the basis of their marriage over time, and there didn't seem to be much space between them. From the outside, they were still a strong team. The news on the 3rd of August, 2015, was so shocking because of this. They had been married for 26 years and worked together for 35 years before they told each other they were splitting up. The divorce was said to be friendly, and the couple promised to keep helping each other. But stopping a marriage wasn't the only thing that happened. They still had a kid together, had been together for decades, and had a professional connection that had shaped Reba's whole career. And in the end, Reba would have to deal with something even worse. I saw the man who was her husband and best business partner start a new life without her. As a ranch girl from Oklahoma, she became a star in country singing. Reba McEntire grew up on a ranch in Chalky, Oklahoma, with cattle, rodeos, and a family that knew how to work hard. Long before she became one of the biggest names in country music, Reba was born in McAlester in 1955. She was the third of Clark and Jacqueline McEntire's 4 children. Her family had a long history with rodeo. In 1934, her grandfather became a world champion steer roper. And 3 years later, her father did the same thing. There wasn't much fun on the family ranch, and Reba and her siblings had to work like everyone else. They helped with the cattle and other chores before and after school. This taught Reba early on the value of discipline, which would later become one of the most important traits in her work. But there was another side to the McEntire family. They loved music. In her younger years, Reba's mother, Jacqueline, wanted to be a country singer. She went on to work as a teacher, library, and secretary. But she never gave up her love of music. She shared her love of horses with her children by teaching them to sing harmony in the car on long trips to their dad's rodeo events. Reba began acting in school plays when she was very young. By the time she was a teenager, music was more than just something she liked. She and her siblings got together and started singing as a trio. They eventually started performing at Oklahoma events, bars, and dance halls. They even put out a small regional single honoring their famous grandpa. Reba got her first taste of performing in front of people on that song. It wasn't just singing, either. She looked like the kind of kid who was set on doing everything. She learned to play the piano and guitar, ran track, played basketball, and became interested in rodeo, finally training to be a barrel racer. The mix of music, competition, and life on the ranch shaped the person she would become on stage. People liked her work, and she could handle herself in places where no one was going to give her anything. She didn't give up that practical side of her life right away after graduating from high school in 1973. She went to Southeastern Oklahoma State University to study elementary education with a music minor. She also kept helping out on the family ranch. Back then it wasn't a sure thing that they would make it as a country music star. In 1974, her father pushed her to sing the national anthem at the National Finals Rodeo in Oklahoma City. This was the turning point. Reba got the chance through Clem McSpadden, a family friend and rodeo announcer. And that performance put her in touch with someone who would change her life. When country singer Red Steagall heard her sing, he knew right away that her singing was different. Soon after that, Reba sang for him at a hotel party, without a band or other musicians. She became sure that Steagall had something special. When Reba's mom asked Steagall if he could help all 3 of her kids get recording contracts, he probably didn't tell her what she was thinking. It was impossible for him to take all of them. But he thought he could get Reba, because she was different. That was enough to make the young singer want to go to Nashville. Reba wasn't sure at that point that becoming a professional musician was the right road for her. She couldn't stand the trip she was taking with her mother to Nashville in 1975. It was clear to Jacqueline that her daughter was scared. Everything changed after one talk. The woman told Reba that she didn't have to go, but she did say that she was living her own dreams through her daughter. Reba chose to keep going. Everything that happened afterward was possible because of that choice. In order to get the interest of Glenn Keener at Polygram Mercury Records, Reba made a demo tape. The company was interested in 2 female artists, but they could only sign 1. When Keener showed the tapes to the company's offices in Chicago, Reba's was chosen. In late 1975, she signed her first recording deal. The next year, she started making money by recording professionally. Her first few albums didn't make her a star right away. Her first hit didn't do very well on the country charts, and the songs that came after it did not do very well either. Reba kept going though. She went on tours and played wherever she could. She learned how to control the stage even when the musicians playing with her didn't know much about country music. Things started to change at the end of the 1970s. Reba's first #1 country song was a duet with Jackie Ward. As her recordings got more attention, she put together her own touring band, which included her brother Pake and sister Susie. Meanwhile, the family took their gear from one show to the next in a 3-car caravan. It wasn't exactly the glamorous life of a country star that some people might imagine, but it was the start of something much bigger. Reba wasn't just learning how to sing. She was also learning how to handle the tough life of a professional singer. Reba made a big step forward when she fought for control over the music she wanted to make. Reba's first record company tried to get her to sound more like country pop, but she didn't like it. She would have liked something more traditional, like the country songs she grew up with. She became much more involved in picking her music after she moved to MCA Records. That choice was very important. People liked the songs she chose, and by the mid-1980s, Reba wasn't having as much trouble making a name for herself. Her voice was becoming one of the most recognizable in country music. In 1984, her big breakthrough record was a big deal. At a time when country music was changing, the record leaned toward traditional sounds. Its success helped Reba become known as an artist who could make old country music sound new without losing its identity. She won the Female Vocalist of the Year award from the Country Music Association, and things only got better from there. The next projects she worked on also produced big hits, and country music fans knew her singing right away. She had achieved a whole new level by 1986. The Oklahoma Ranch Girls record went to the top of the country charts, was certified platinum, and won her a Grammy. This proved that she was a real country music superstar. Reba's rise was so interesting because she didn't become famous quickly. After years of small shows, family support, long drives, hard choices, and being ready to say no when the music being offered to her didn't feel right, it formed. She learned that nothing worthwhile comes easily from the people she grew up with, and she took that lesson with her to Nashville. In the last few years of the 1980s, Reba McEntire wasn't just another popular country musician. She was a star now, with a unique voice, a devoted fan base, and a career that was just starting to reach its full potential. The terrible event that changed Reba McEntire for good. By the beginning of the 1990s, Reba McEntire had hit a level in her career that not many country singers ever reach. She had a lot of performances planned. Her tour band was more than just a group of musicians working behind a star. Their name was everywhere. An awful lot of them had been traveling with Reba for years, going from city to city and sharing the busy but fun life that came with her fame. Reba and her crew depended more and more on private planes to get from one show to the next, because their touring schedule had gotten so busy. At the time, it seemed like the smart thing to do, but it would soon turn a normal weekend into one of the worst times of her life. Reba and her band were on the road again in March 1991 for a new set of shows. They had just come back from playing shows in Alaska, Michigan, and Indiana, among other places, before going to San Diego for a private gig for IBM. Members of her touring group were to be transported on 2 planes, while Reba, her husband Narvel Blackstock, and her stylist were to travel separately the next day. There was nothing about the evening that made me think something terrible was going to happen. Reba and Narvel went back to their nearby hotel because the planes were leaving. They planned to continue their trip the next morning. Then, early in the morning on the 16th of March, the phone rang. When Narvel picked up the phone, he found out that one of the planes carrying Reba's band members had crashed. The plane crashed into the side of Otay Mountain soon after takeoff, killing everyone on board. 8 people from Reba's traveling band died. They were guitarists Chris Austin and Michael Thomas, keyboardist Kirk Capello and Joey Cingarero, singer Paula K. Evans, road manager Jim Hammond, bassist Terry Jackson, and drummer Anthony Saputo. Donald Holmes and Chris Hollinger, the 2 pilots, were also killed. There were no strangers that Reba had hired for a few shows, so the news was terrible for her. She knew them, worked with them, and really cared about them. Some had been part of her work life for years, and when they left all of a sudden, it was like losing family members. In a statement shared on her behalf, it was clear how much the tragedy had hurt her. People said she was completely broken up, and longed to go back to Nashville so she could start dealing with what had happened. The rest of the band got to Nashville safely on the second plane, but they must not have felt very happy for long. In the end, Reba and Narvel came back on their own plane, carrying with them the news that the people who had been with Reba every night were now gone. The trip home was part of a terrible weekend that left Reba both physically and mentally worn out. She remembered how hard those days had been, and the loss would always be one of the worst things that had happened to her. Yet, Reba had to go back on stage, even though she was very sad. She sang at the 63rd Academy Awards, just 9 days after the crash, a song from Postcards from the Edge that was up for an award. Not just anyone, but someone who was still dealing with the sudden deaths of so many close friends and family was asked to do something very strange. And Reba did go through with the show. Behind the scenes, friends in the country music scene also spoke up. Vince Gill and Dolly Parton offered to help Reba as she started the hard process of rebuilding her traveling career. Music became one of the ways she was able to make sense of what had happened. Later that same year, she put out an album called For My Broken Heart, in honor of the people who had died in her road band. The record didn't try to hide the pain. Instead, it gave it a place to go. Its songs were about broken hearts, being alone, losing someone close, and emotional wounds that don't just go away because life goes on. The title track and Is There Life Out both went to #1 in the country charts. Reba could make powerful music out of hard feelings, as shown on other songs on the album. As of that writing, the album was her highest charting album on the Billboard 200, where it peaked at number 13. It also went to number 3 on the country chart. What's more, it hit people close to home because the feeling behind it couldn't have been separated from what Reba had just been through. In the end, For My Broken Heart sold more than 4 million copies in the US, making it her best-selling album up to that point. But the reason it existed could never be erased by its happiness. Every accomplishment that came with the record made Reba think of the people she had lost. And maybe that's what made the music so strong. Reba didn't just sing about sadness for the sake of it. The song she was singing came from a place of deep personal loss, putting all the things she couldn't say to the people who had stood next to her on the road on her voice. The one thing that had always been there for her. The guys who were there before Narvel Blackstock. Reba McEntire was married to Narvel Blackstock before he became the man most connected to her personal and business life. This marriage started when the country star was still figuring out where her career was going. Reba married Charlie Battles in 1976, when she was still a young singer in Nashville, getting her name out there. They built their life around the Oklahoma ranch life Reba had known since she was a child. Battles was a successful steer wrestler and rancher. Her work was starting to need more of her time at the time, but she was still trying to balance being an actress with the duties of ranch life. It looked like that plan would work for a while. Reba kept working on her singing and kept up the life she and Charlie had built together. As her work grew, though, it got harder to ignore how different the two worlds were. Reba was traveling and performing more, which helped her build the kind of business that would make her one of the biggest names in country music. Over time, their priorities and ways of life started to shift away from each other. After about 11 years of marriage, they split up in 1987. It was a very important time in Reba's life when she got divorced. It wasn't just that she was leaving a marriage. On the job front, she was also starting a new phase. She was really getting ahead in her music business, and she was starting to have more say over where it was going. In just a few years, she would meet another man who would become very important to both her work and her heart. Name of the person was Narvel Blackstock. Narvel and Reba got married in 1989, and they were together for 26 years. Reba's second marriage became involved with almost every part of her work life, unlike her first one. Narvel was in her band before he became her manager, and the two of them had a huge career together. They had a mixed family with their son Shelby and worked together for many years. There were many years when Narvel seemed to know more about Reba's life than almost anyone else. But after they got divorced in 2015, Reba started a new love story. She finally became friends with Anthony Skeeter Lazuzzo, an American businessman and photographer she met through friends they both had while on vacation in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. As they shared glimpses of their travels and adventures together, their romance became public. There was a time when it looked like Reba had found a calmer kind of happiness without the stress of her first marriage. This relationship was different in a clear way. Reba was no longer working for the person she was dating while they were dating. Instead, she seemed to be enjoying the simple things in life, like traveling, spending time with her partner, and making memories. Without the work connection that had been so important to her marriage to Narvel, that relationship did end in the end though. Reba said that she and Skeeter had broken up earlier that year in 2019. They still seemed to respect each other after they broke up though. Reba said that even though they were going their separate ways, they kept talking and stayed friends. It was another example of Reba's determination to deal with endings in her private life without making them public fights. That would happen over and over again in Reba's relationships. Whether it was the end of her first marriage just as her career was taking off, the end of her decades-long relationship with Narvel, or the end of her later relationship with Skeeter, Reba's love life was full of chapters that often happened at the same time as big changes in her life. Fans were not ready for what happened after her divorce from Narvel though, from any of those relationships. When the man she had been with for decades started dating someone else, it made things a lot harder after they broke up. It's finally time for Reba McEntire to talk about Narvel's new relationship. It was already painful when Reba McEntire and Narvel Blackstock said they were getting a divorce in 2015. After 26 years of marriage and more than 30 years of building a career together, they broke up. It was the end of one of the longest-lasting relationships in country music. After that, more bad news came out that made things even more difficult. Narvel was said to have moved on with Laura Putty Stroud, a real estate agent in Nashville that Reba knew. She was part of their larger group of friends, had spent time with Reba, and had even been there with her during some of the best years of her marriage. All of a sudden, Reba's friend was being linked romantically to the man she had been married to for more than 20 years. Reba and Narvel's story began long before they got divorced. They met for the first time in 1980, when Narvel became a steel player in Reba's band. The relationship that began as a business, one slowly turned into a friendship and then into something much deeper. They got married in Lake Tahoe in 1989, in a small ceremony on a boat. Along with their son Shelby, they had 3 children from Narvel's first marriage, and Reba became their stepmother. They seemed almost impossible to separate for years. By the time Narvel became Reba's boss, their emotional and professional lives were very connected. They were more than just husband and wife. They were also Reba's parents, friends, business partners, and the people who made important career choices for her. When they said they were splitting up on the 3rd of August 2015, they had worked together for 35 years. The marriage was over though. When asked in December of that year, Reba confirmed that the divorce had been finalized on the 28th of October. She didn't attack Narvel in public or talk about private things that had happened between them though. Instead, she was incredibly calm. She told her fans that they were no longer together but were still friends, making it clear that she didn't want their split to become a public fight. Reba later told them that the cool answer she gave meant she didn't want the divorce. In 2016, she said that she didn't want the marriage to end and that it had been very hard to get used to life without Narvel. She knew, though, that relationships sometimes hit a point where staying together is bad for both people. It was basically Reba's belief that life was too short for 2 unhappy people to stay that way, and she finally realized she had to accept what was going on and move on. Then Laura Stroud's story came out. By January 2016, rumors were going around that Narvel was dating Stroud. The relationship quickly became newsworthy. The story was interesting for more than just the fact that Narvel had found love so quickly after the split. Perhaps it was the fact that Stroud was said to have known both Narvel and Reba. Back in the days before the split, old photos and memories made the link clear. Reba and Stroud went to a Katy Perry concert together in 2014 and posed for a funny picture while wearing bright wigs. It was also known that Stroud was at Shelby's races, and Reba had publicly thanked her for taking pictures. There was nothing strange about any of it at the time. She was just someone in Reba's circle, so the later stories were even more of a surprise. At that very moment, a woman who had been Reba's friend was being called Narvel's new partner. There were even rumors that they were seriously dating and might get married one day. For people outside the couple, this was the kind of thing that could have easily turned a private breakup into a big public show. But Reba wouldn't let the public see that drama. She never spoke out against Stroud in public, and she didn't talk about Narvel's new relationship in public either. Instead, she kept stressing how important it was to be polite to the man she had spent most of her adult life with. Reba was determined not to talk about her personal life in public, according to people who knew her well. That choice told us a lot about how she planned to deal with what happened next. The other reason Reba couldn't just get rid of Narvel was because of something else. Even though they were no longer married, she was still a part of the family they had together. She stayed close with Shelby and kept in touch with Narvel's other children, including Brandon Blackstock. Reba made it clear that getting a divorce does not mean getting rid of the kids. She thought those relationships should last, no matter what happened between the adults. That may have been the main reason she was so calm in her answer. No matter how Reba felt about Narvel's new relationship with someone from their group, she knew that anger could hurt relationships that were still important to her. She didn't give the world the explosive response that many people might have expected. Instead, she chose silence, respect, and space. Even after all these years, that restraint is still one of the most striking things about the story. Reba didn't have to openly support or oppose Narvel's new relationship. What she did pointed to something much easier. Even though they were no longer married, they still had a history together, and she didn't want to destroy everything they had built just because they were no longer together romantically. Reba McEntire had lived a very public life her whole life, so that may have been her most honest answer. How do you feel about how Reba McEntire dealt with the news? Let us know what you think in the space below. Do not forget to share, like, and give your email address. Also, click on the next video that comes up. It will be fun for you.